Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer video. And today, we're going to be talking about my most hated cards in Pioneer. Pioneer is my favorite format. It's been that way since 2019, when the format actually came out. But there's a lot of cards that I just hate playing against. Whether or not it's because the card is really strong, or the gameplay's not that great, or, anything in between. These are the cards that I hate the most. So a few things before we hop into the video. Obviously, this is going to be my own list. There's no numbers proving anything like, oh, because this card is played X amount, I hate it this much or anything like that. It's nothing like that. It's just based off of my opinion, and obviously my opinion is going to be different than yours. So if you have a different list of cards that you hate more, or you think there's something that definitely should have been on my list that was not, go ahead and put that in the comment section below. Just cards that you hate that I didn't mention. The other thing I have to mention is we are currently on our road to 1,000 subscribers, and we are getting very, very close. And if you want to be part of the huge giveaway that's going to be happening once we get there, you're definitely going to want to be subscribed to the channel, because A, that's one of the ways you can be entered into the giveaway, and B, you want to be notified as soon as it comes out, because as soon as that video comes out, it'll be about a week or two after that, and then it's going to be the giveaway, which there's going to be so much stuff. There's going to be sealed product, there's going to be decks, there's going to be singles, there's going to be so many cool cards. So you're definitely going to want to be subscribed to the channel so that way you won't miss it. So okay, let's go and hop into it. I have 10 cards that I'm going to be going over today, and number 10 is a card that I think would have been a lot higher on the list in the past, but as of right now, this is kind of where I wanted to mention the card here. Number 10, I have Nickos Shrine to Nyx. So it doesn't see as much play as it used to. It's really only featured in Mono Green Devotion as well as Green White Angels, but the card is just so absurd. I mean, most of the time with Mono Green Devotion specifically, it's like the deck, if it doesn't have Nickos, the deck is just like a random hodgepodge, mono green, monster-ish kind of deck. It really doesn't do anything crazy, but then there's the games where they maybe have like an opening ley line, and then they have the elf, and then they just play the Nickos, and they just make an ungodly amount of mana. And it's just one of those things where it's like, man, if it's not for that one card, this deck is like trash kind of thing, and that's kind of where I'm at with Nickos. I do like the card. I play with Nickos a lot personally, but man, just sometimes this card just drives me absolutely insane, because it always seems like my opponent also has like the, all right, I'm going to make, 12 mana with Nickos. I'm gonna storm the festival, and then they put another Nickos into play, and then they activate it, and then they untap it with their, with the Kiora, and then they activate it again, and then they flash back the Storm of the Festival, and it's like, okay, I guess I'll just pick up my cards. The game is pretty much over at this point. So, Nickos is number 10 on the list. Number 9, I have a card that's, I would say, pretty controversial in terms of some people love it, some people hate it. It's Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize, personally, is not something that I hate a ton playing against. Like, yes, it is very frustrating when you mulligan down to 5, and then your opponent Thoughtseizes you and takes, like, your only early play, and then you do nothing for 2 turns, and then they play something else, and it just gets kind of worse from there. I definitely completely understand that, but Thoughtseize is not a card that I personally hate playing against a lot. When you're in a top deck war with your mid-range opponent, let's say you're able to answer like their Fable or something like that, and you're both in a top deck war, and they top deck Thoughtseize, it can just be so bad. It's like, oh, I'm already at 7, I don't want to take 2, or they don't even have any cards in hand, and it sometimes in the late game is not very, very good. So, but that's kind of why Fable's also really good, spoiler alert. It's probably later in the video, but that's kind of why Thoughtseize is so good, and that's why I had number 9 on the list. Alrighty, number 8, I have LLine Binding. Simply put, this card is just so efficient. I mean, most of the time it's a 1 mana, exile whatever permanent I want, and it's just really good. And then 5-color fires can sacrifice it and go grab a 7-drop, which is just kind of silly. So that's kind of the main reason I hate LLine Binding. It's just such an efficient removal spell, and it works really, really well in the 5-color fires deck. And with LLine Binding, half the time, I feel like they always catch me off guard. Like sometimes, like I play a lot in paper, so I'll be playing, and like they'll tap out, and I'll be like, oh, there's no way they can have the LLine Binding, and then all of a sudden there's like this random treasure token that I forgot about, and then they're like, oh, LLine Binding, boom, take your thing, and it's a blowout, and stuff like that. Like, man, just LLine Binding just drives me absolutely nuts. The card is so good, and that's why I have it at number 8 on the list. Number 7 is a relative newcomer to the Pioneer format, at least in terms of, being a good card. It's even Interruptor. The card is just super strong. It kind of reminds me of Spell Queller, essentially. Like, it's a very, very similar card. in those terms. It's just really good in the green-white Coco and green-white Taxes deck. I mean, when it enters the battlefield, exile target spell, it becomes plotted, and spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast. Even Interruptor is just so good. They can have it on turn 2 sometimes after an elf. They can, put it into play with a collected company and then steal your spell with it still on the stack. It's just a really, really good card. Even Interruptor, again, it's not a card that I personally am super frustrated with, but man, this card definitely puts in work, and it's a big reason why the green-white Coco deck is actually good in Pioneer, and that's why it's number 7 on the list. All right, number 6. I have arguably, honestly, the most hated card in the format to a certain extent. It's Fable the Mir Breaker. The card is just so good. I mean, there's multiple reasons why this card is good and why it's on the list. I mean, it's on the list because it's just so darn efficient. I mean, making the 1 or the 2/2 that makes treasures, and then you can like fix your hand a little bit, and then you flip it over, and then you need a removal spell. Otherwise, the card is just going to outvalue you. I mean, the card is just so darn good. Fable the Mir Breaker, number 6 on the list. It sees play in so many different decks. Obviously, you got Rakdos Midrange, Creativity, Izzet Phoenix, 5-color Nymph, John Sacrifice, Martyr Greasefang, and more. There's more than just those decks that actually play this card. But overall, Fable the Mir Breaker, absolutely busted, bonkers card. It's probably going to get banned at some point in Pioneer, and that's why it's number 6 on the list. Okay, top 5 territory here. Number 5 is actually the card in the thumbnail that pairs really, really well with Fable the Mir Breaker. It's Shieldred the Apocalypse. And really with this card, this is kind of like a really, really personal thing, is the decks I play always seem to have such a hard time with Shieldred. I mean, when I'm playing like a bunch of 4/4s with haste and 4/5s myself, it's just so hard to get through Shieldred. I mean, it's a Death Toucher too, so it trades with any creature. Like, it just deals a whole bunch of damage to you. They gain a whole bunch of life. So if you're playing a beatdown deck, it's like, well, I can't attack because I don't have any good attacks. And then they're going to draw a card and they're going to gain life. And then they're going to, oh, their Fable goes to chapter 2. Then they're going to gain some more life. So it's just so hard to beat sometimes. Like, obviously, Shieldred, depends on what decks you like to play, whether or not you have a big problem with Shieldred for the most part. But for me personally, I have such a hard time beating Shieldred. Like, it feels good. Like, you beat one and then they play another one and it's like, oh, goodness. Like, okay, maybe I can beat this second one. But yeah, Shieldred the Apocalypse, super duper strong card. It's just good in a number of different decks, and that's why I've got it number 5 on the list. All right, number 4, which this is a card I think a lot of aggro players are going to relate to this, but trust me, it's not just because it's a really good board wipe, and that card is Sunfall. There's honestly one reason why I hate Sunfall. I don't like board wipes. Yeah, do I like playing against board wipes? Not necessarily, because I like to play aggro decks. I like Supreme Verdict, whatever, has never really bothered me. Heck, even like Fumigate back in the day, never bothered me. The reason I don't like Sunfall is because of the exile effect. The exiling all creatures makes it to where you can't play against it. Like, there's really nothing you can do. Unless you counter the spell, there's no counterplay to it. Like in the past, it was like with Supreme Verdict, you have cards like Heroic Intervention and such to where you can give your creatures indestructible, and like there's a little bit of counterplay to it. But with Sunfall, it just happens. Like, there's really nothing you can do about Sunfall. It's just, okay, my creatures are exiled. I mean, like, maybe I can sack some in response to make the incubate, creature a little smaller. But realistically, like, it's just, they Sunfall, and like, that's it. That's it. Unless you're playing like spirits, it's enough said. That's really all it is with Sunfall. So that's why I'm not a big fan of Sunfall, just because there's really no counterplay to it for aggro decks. So that's why Sunfall is number 4 on my list. Okay, number 3, I have a really, really big flying death-touching angel that's incredibly annoying, and that's Atraxa Grand Unifier. This card is just so darn good. It has really good stats. It's just got a whole mess of keywords there. Oh, and they just get to draw a whole bunch of cards, and you get to know the cards, so you further know how much more you are dead, because they have a 7/7 flying vigilance death-touching lifelinker. Oh, and then it's like, yeah, I put this counter spell in my hand, this land into my hand, I put this other removal spell into my hand, and then, oh, I can go get another Atraxa now, because I put this card in my hand. Like, it's just so good. Obviously, no one's ever casting it. They're cheating into play with Rakdos Transmog or Rakdos or Creativity, or they're reanimating it now with Zombify. Just Atraxa is just so darn good. I mean, like, honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't even banned in Standard, because the card is really, really good. Honestly, with Atraxa, the whole reason in my green aggro decks I like to put Pick Your Poison in my sideboard is just because I hate losing to Atraxa, because it's so good. So that's why Atraxa is number 3 on the list. This card is just so darn good. It's really, really hard to beat. And yeah, I have to play cards to beat it. Otherwise, I am just single-handedly going to lose to Atraxa more often than not. So okay, we're in top 2 territory here. So number 2, and I might sound like a salt lord a little bit here when I say this next card, but it's Greasefang. I hate this card just because of the deck. I mean, just, it's for multiple reasons. Okay, so Greasefang, obviously, you know, they can have the magical Christmas land turn 3. I say magical Christmas land, but they do turn 3 against me all the time. They even can, like, turn 2 it in, like, really weird ways if they go, like, was like turn 1 Stitcher Supplier and then they mill like Can't Stay Away Greasefang, which I mean that like almost never happens. But yeah, so Greasefang just already by itself is just already so annoying because they're always going to turn 3 the Parhelion, and it's always Parhelion. Well, you know, sometimes they don't have it. No, they always have it. It seems like they always do. Like, I guess best case scenario is like they reanimate like an Asika's Chariot, which is actually like manageable, but Greasefang is just so darn good. It's pretty consistent for the most part. Like obviously in your sideboard, you can have like your ley lines and your Rest in Peace and your Tormod's Crypts and things like that. You have Rending Volleys to kind of help remove it before combat. But Greasefang is just so annoying because not only is it like not really that fun to play against just because they can, turn 3, they just, you know, reanimated Parhelion and attack me, and now they have 2 more angels, so it's like basically just game over. The other thing is when the deck is not doing its thing, it's just playing a bunch of like 3/2s that loot, which is just not that exciting. It's just like a bad mid-range deck where half their cards don't work if there's like a Rest in Peace in play. Like obviously they can have like an Abrupt Care or something, but overall, I'm just not a big fan of Greasefang in general. I've never liked playing against the deck. I don't play the deck because I just don't find it fun at all. It kind of reminds me of Living End in Modern, where it's just like, you like pitch a card, and then boom, and then it's like pretty much over at that point if you don't have a counterspell. I don't know. It's kind of what that reminds me of. But yeah, not a fan of Greasefang. No offense to anybody that likes to play Greasefang, but I just absolutely cannot stand the deck. And you want to know what? It's not because I can't beat it. I would say I beat this deck more often than I lose to it. It's just really, really annoying. It's just not fun to play against. So that's why I have Greasefang at number 2. So most of you are probably wondering, what does he have at number 1? And it's kind of a funny card, and it can kind of apply to the rest of these cards in a way which will make sense in just a second here. But my number 1 card, it's not just Treasure Cruise, it's the second Treasure Cruise, which they always have. Izzet Phoenix, they always have the second Treasure Cruise, which, to be fair, it does make sense, okay? Because they have Opt, and they have Consider, and they have Sleight of Hand, and then they have, what's the Ledger Shredder. So they're gonna turn through so many cards when they're playing their deck, to be fair. Like, they're gonna have multiple Treasure Cruises. It happens a lot. But it's always like, they play the Treasure Cruise, and you're like, okay, well, now I'm behind because they Treasure Cruise, and they got a bird back, and like, you know, whatever. And then it's like, they go the next turn, they're like, boom, 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 boom. Maybe have another Treasure Cruise, or the following turn, they Treasure Cruise again, or they Galvanic Iteration to copy another Treasure Cruise, and it's just like, oh my goodness. It's just, and Treasure Cruise, you know, the first one is not the problem. The first one is not why people are talking about Treasure Cruise wanting to be banned. It's when they're playing number 2 and number 3, and they've just drawn so many extra cards that game, and that's why you lose. They just drew way more cards than you, and there's not really anything you can do about it. When they're playing Ancestral Recall, like, I mean, how are you going to win at that point? Like, Treasure Cruise is just absolutely insane. It's always the second one, and my opponent always has them against. Oh, excuse me. They always have it against me. I even remember going to an RCQ, and it was game 1. I had my opponent on 1 life for like multiple turns, and I just needed to draw like any random creature to end the game. And my opponent, 4 turns in a row, cast a Treasure Cruise for like 1 or 2 mana. I mean, they drew all 4 Treasure Cruises, and I was just like, okay, I mean, I guess you drew all 4 Treasure Cruises, like, good job. And it was just like, oh, Treasure Cruise is just so frustrating, but it's always the second one that gets me. The third one, if they cast the third one, I'm normally just, all right, whatever, like, I'm probably gonna lose, but the second one is always like, what does it? They're, you know, they have like 1 card in hand, or just need them to whiff on 1 draw, and then it's always the second Treasure Cruise. That's why the second Treasure Cruise is number 1 on my list of the most hated cards, in my opinion, in Pioneer. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. You're not going to want to miss the giveaway once it comes out. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Sarwanoki, and Night Red 3. If you are interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 a month, and you get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.